Remember the movie Catch Me If You Can? Leonardo DiCaprio played Frank Abagnale, the greatest, if that's the right term, con artist of all time. What made the film stand out was Abagnale's life of lying was all true. With an audacious swagger, he swindled his way around the world. As you'll see these days, Frank's a good guy, but there are plenty of others vying to be the trickiest of tricksters. It's nothing to be proud of, but topping the list is Australian Paul Carter, whose scamming ways, especially with wealthy women, make him a real scumbag. Paul Carter. Liam Bartlett, Paul.
He may look like an ordinary bloke.
It's not your lucky day.
But this is one of Australia's most cunning conmen.
What's this, the ladder of success, is it?
A ruthless operator who's fleeced millions from family, friends, the rich and the poor.
There is no moral limit to Paul Carter. No limit.
Armed with fake profiles, fake documents and fake names.
Is it Carter today or Cristallo or Hamilton?
Anyone in Paul Carter's path is potential prey.
He's just so manipulative and so clever.
Really, Liam?
He even tried his dirty tricks on me.
I don't know who you're talking about.
So clever at his craft.
So I lied to my ex-wife about stuff.
You've lied to a lot.
For me.
Even the world's smartest scammer has a stark warning.
As long as it makes him richer, he really doesn't care about who he's hurt.
I don't care. I mean, what difference does it make?
Now in New York, with a new wife and a new name,
You seem to have this habit of collecting fiancés.
we catch the Casanova conman.
I don't have any money, dude. I didn't take any money from fucking anybody.
He's not your average con man. I mean, he's the worst of the worst.
This was meant to be Brooklyn Carter's forever home. A stunning property where she and Paul Carter would raise their young son.
And it was supposed to be the house that we were going to grow old in. And now it is just an empty shell.
An empty shell to go with her husband's empty promises that led her to buy this in the first place.
Everything he has said along the way is completely in ruins, isn't it?
Everything. Everything. Everybody's life that he's touched has been damaged.
The ultimate homewrecker.
Yeah.
Brooklyn's heartbreaking saga began the day she stumbled across Paul Carter's dating profile back in 2002. A single, child-free, multi-millionaire from Melbourne's upper crust. It's no wonder that before long, Brooklyn was spellbound by his charm.
He was the greatest lover. He was the greatest romancer. He was the smartest guy in the room. He seemed to be able to do anything and everything, and, you know, he just seemed too good to be true.
As it turned out, he was. Paul Carter was really a twice-married father of three, working as a tradie here in the suburbs of Melbourne. He went to extraordinary lengths to pretend he was a man of money, and then fleeced anyone who fell for his trickery.
I didn't pick him, he picked me. I was a single mother. I had low self-esteem. I was an easy target.
You think he sniffed that out straight away?
Of course, because I think predators like him know what to look for.
By the time Brooklyn learned of Paul's past, she was already under his spell.
I thought, you know, this guy's going to protect me and take care of me, and I'm going to be safe with him. So all that overrode the initial lies and deception.
But the deception, driven by greed, would only deepen. As the daughter of a multi-millionaire property developer, Paul valued the weight of Brooklyn's wallet more than the size of her heart. By marrying her in 2003 and having a son shortly after, Paul earned more than just a family.
I was his retirement fund, undoubtedly. He was looking at the long-term picture.
That's a pretty mercenary way of putting it, but that's what he was thinking.
Mercenary but honest.
To fund his lavish lifestyle, Paul borrowed money from Brooklyn's family under the guise of legitimate loans.
How much do you reckon that he stung you for?
At least $2 million between myself and my father.
At least $2 million.
Yeah.
His repayments relied on a multi-million euro inheritance that he was due to receive from an Italian relative, a lie that he'd go to extraordinary lengths to maintain.
And he's showing me bank statements and a whole array of other documentation which he'd produced fraudulently.
Like this letter from the Italian Ministry of Finance relating to the transfer of Paul's non-existent inheritance.
He was pretty good at forging those documents, wasn't he?
Oh, he was a master at it. A master at it. He's not your average con man. He went to enormous lengths. And there was always enough of the truth in his lies for it to be believable.
With no inheritance in sight, their relationship with each other and Brooklyn's family became strained. In 2014, they decided to move to the United States to give their young family a fresh start. Paul sent his wife and son over first, claiming he needed time to wrap up work in Australia. But in reality, other plans were at play. One night, not long after she moved, Brooklyn was woken by her frantic son.
He walked into my bedroom and he said, "Who's this lady in the picture with Dad?"
Paul Carter, arm in arm with another woman, attending an engagement party in Melbourne. As it turned out, it was his own. The bombshell blonde, his new fiancée, and his next victim.
Can you imagine finding out that about your dad? He's supposed to be your superhero, and now he's nothing to him. He's just an embarrassment.
The lady in red was Catherine Dubois, a single mother from Melbourne who was looking for love. Like many who crossed Paul's path, she too was hypnotised by the charismatic conman who promised her the world.
He was a magnificent beast. He was the Prince Charming, the knight that was going to come and rescue me and turn my life around.
But as she would soon discover, the fantasy he offered was nothing more than a facade.
The Paul that I love does not exist, never did. My life is not the fairy tale it was going to be.
Coming up,
I was the love of his life and he wanted our life to start now.
a new fiancé,
He told you that he was single.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but the same old scam.
This is meant to be $250,000 worth of diamonds.
Just how low
To tell people the mother of your child died of bone cancer is so despicable.
will this con man go?
Graphic detail of how she died.
That your partner had died of bone
Yeah, that was a
cancer.
mistake.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Across the world, in New York City, this Melbourne mum finds herself a very long way from home. When Catherine Dubois, a smart, successful businesswoman, found Paul Carter online in 2014, she thought she'd met her perfect match. Instead,
That's all a fucking lie.
she'd fallen victim to a ruthless conman.
Let's talk about Catherine.
So what did he tell you about his life at that stage when you first met up?
That he was a self-made multimillionaire and that he had come from a privileged background. And then he named, I've got 2 Ferraris, I've got Lamborghinis, I've got Porsches.
He told you that he was single.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that his,
Had been single for years and that he had been searching for his forever princess all that time.
Blinded by his extraordinary display of wealth, Catherine was open about her own, revealing that her beauty salon was soon to be bought by the government to make way for estate development.
and what was that payout worth, Catherine?
Technically it should have been nearly $300,000.
So from the very first date, he knew that you were in for a payday.
Yeah.
With her payout imminent, Paul wasted no time in making their relationship official. 12 weeks after meeting her, and while his family was overseas, the married man dropped to one knee and proposed with a 3.5-carat diamond ring, which she'd later discover was fake.
He just said I was the love of his life and that he wanted to spend the rest of it with me, and he wanted our life to start now. He didn't want to wait. He wanted me to make him the happiest man in the world. This was going to be where we were married and we would retire and live a life of leisure.
Their plan was to move here, to New York City, where they'd live in a multi-million-dollar penthouse overlooking Central Park.
Why do you think he chose here?
It suited the story, it suited his backstory that all of this belonged with the Maseratis and the Astons that he used as leverage to make you believe that he had money.
It's a big story though, isn't it?
It's a big lie.
A big lie used purely to take Catherine's cash. Once engaged, Paul convinced her to sign over legal rights to her salon so he could negotiate the payout on her behalf.
Why did you do that?
Well, because there was a lot of stress involved in it, and I was trying to run the business and deal with lawyers. And then there was Paul, who was just such a rich multi-millionaire man that he wasn't going to be interested in my meagre $250,000, $300,000 payout.
And you trusted him?
I did trust him. I did trust him.
You could forgive Catherine for trusting her husband-to-be, who went to extreme lengths to convince her that he was of no financial threat.
When you go back through these photos, bad memories?
I don't have bad memories of it. It was a lovely night.
After accepting his proposal, Paul threw a no-expenses-spared engagement party at the State Library in Melbourne. Unbeknownst to her, he put the bills in Catherine's name.
It's a crazy amount of effort.
Together, they looked the part. He dressed in black tie, she in a custom-made couture gown, dripping in what she'd later learn were fake jewels.
This is where he parades me around with my latest fake gift, the fake necklace.
That necklace?
Fake gift, the fake necklace. This is meant to be $250,000 worth of diamonds.
He told you that necklace was worth
$250,000.
$250,000.
Yep. I can't comprehend it to this day.
Of all that he faked, perhaps it was the story about the fate of his wife that was most disturbing.
She died of bone cancer 8 years before he met me.
What did he say about the cancer? Did he go into great detail?
Great detail, graphic detail of how she died, of the rotten breath, the hollow sunken eyes.
Why did he bother create that story about?
Because you can't talk about it. You can't come up to someone and question them about a story like that. So then it becomes an untouchable backstory.
Pretty mercenary thing to do, isn't it?
Pretty clever. Works.
Soon after their engagement party, Paul's lies began to unravel. Within 2 weeks, Catherine received a message from a fake Facebook account warning her that Paul's wife was still alive.
He's playing both you and his wife. Neither of you know about each other. He was married with a child and everything he'd told me was a lie. I needed to get out.
You must have thought, hang on, what are you talking about?
I felt my reality go into a fog.
To tell people that someone is dead, the mother of your child, and the woman that you are currently married to died of bone cancer is so despicable, it takes it to a whole other level.
Paul's wife, Brooklyn Carter, was indeed alive and well.
Come on.
While he was celebrating his engagement to another woman, she was busy in America, setting up a new life for their young family.
Hey, Jackie.
Once Paul's lies were exposed, he flew there in an attempt to right his remarkable wrongs.
You must be the most patient person in the history of the world.
Or the most stupid. I don't know. But he's still the father of my child at that point, and I'm still in a country where I don't know anyone with big plans for us to start a new life here.
So he knew your fears and your trepidations.
Yeah, and he preyed on that. He preyed on it.
Paul Carter.
Paul stayed in the United States, where he now works as a self-employed tradie in Albany, New York.
Come on, Paul. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
When we tracked him down to question his ways, the convincing conman offered very unconvincing excuses.
Then why would you tell Catherine that your partner had died of bone cancer?
Yeah, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. Because I was going through a bad time with my then wife, and it was just a mistake.
It wasn't the only mistake Paul claimed to have made.
What about the Italian inheritance that didn't exist?
There isn't one.
Was that another mistake?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
That's how little it means to him. So what? You know, it was just a mistake and probably won't happen again, you know, and that's just his way of getting out of that, being confronted about it.
Frank Abagnale knows the mindset of a conman better than most. That's because he was one.
Have you stayed with us before?
No, I've been primarily based on the West Coast. Is it all right if I write you a check for the room?
No problem, sir.
Played famously by Leonardo DiCaprio in the film Catch Me If You Can, Frank is known as the greatest scammer of all time.
You've well and truly moved from the dark side, haven't you?
Yeah.
Today, he's considered one of the world's most respected security consultants, advising top intelligence agencies, including the FBI, here in Washington, D.C. He says Paul's greed is built into his DNA.
Paul Carter is an individual who this is just a way of life to him. So if tomorrow he were to get $10 million from an individual, he would just go on to the next person. As long as it makes him richer, he really doesn't care about who he hurts or whose feelings he hurts or whose money he steals.
It seems that it's easier for him to con people than it is to work. But you know what? In all honesty, I think he works very hard at being a con man.
Nothing is out of bounds for him, is it?
No. No, not at all. Nothing is out of bounds. He has no limit.
He has misled and manipulated church organisations, housing for the disabled. I mean, he's the worst of the worst.
Carter hasn't just conned women. In 2010, he talked his way into a job as the boss of the Uniting Churches charity, United Housing Victoria. Things went bad fast. Money was unaccounted for and income dropped by 85%. A fraud investigation was launched and Carter was immediately let go.
And then, 1 year later, Paul Carter secured another job, this time as the project manager on this residential and retail complex in Melbourne. While running the build, a staggering amount of money went missing. After losing almost $800,000, the developer lodged a claim with the Victorian government's insurance scheme, which ultimately means the taxpayers repaid much of the lost money. People like Paul Carter target women and charities and small business people, more vulnerable people. What do you make of that?
Yeah, and that's to me is very disgusting. But again, that's all part of that game. So he makes all these things work. He meets the right people, he gets people to vouch for who he says he is, he does the online profiles, and then when he gets the money, there's great satisfaction that he scammed you.
So I keep hearing this, but I don't know who you're talking about.
There are con men and then there are con men, and there are very dangerous con men that will go through any length to get to their final end. And if they think that I'm being found out, then they become aggressive and then they become dangerous as well.
Catherine can attest to such aggression. When she confronted Paul about his double life, she says she was met with rage.
I think at this point he realised that I was going to be the person that was going to shatter his facade. And I think that he was now pulling out all stops to try and silence me.
Despite her mounting fear, she gave Paul a chance to make amends.
When I went back to him, he only could pretend to love me for, I believe it was like 48 hours. And then he assaulted me. And then I left.
He assaulted you? Physically?
Well, he's under investigation for rape.
Catherine's claims remain untested. All Victoria Police has confirmed is that should Paul return to Australia, he will be arrested and questioned about her allegations.
Well, it's not right. I can tell you that much. It's not right. It's pissed me off that she... And actually, in actual fact, I'm going to prove that it's not right because I have an email from Catherine to say, if you don't give me this, I'm going to say that you did that. So I have that.
All right, well, why don't you give us that email?
I don't have it here.
Oh, what a
have it.
coincidence.
Do you think I carry everything around?
You got your phone there.
Yeah.
Why don't you just flick me the email from the phone?
She does. Please. Come on. Can I forward these to you?
Sure, that'd be good.
Yeah, it'll just seem easier for me to do that. Can I get your email?
Yeah. Almost 3 weeks on, and I'm yet to receive that email. So this is the sanctuary, really.
Completely, yeah. It's the hiding place from everything else that's going on.
On this beautiful horse ranch in upstate New York, Brooklyn Carter is trying to make peace with her past. It's beautiful property.
Thank you. It's really peaceful and serene out here. I love it out here.
She's recovering from the carnage caused by this man.
Brooklyn was a disaster. It was from the beginning.
Her ex-husband, Paul Carter.
So I lied to my ex-wife about stuff.
You've lied to a lot of people. After 16 years of marriage, Brooklyn finalised her divorce from Paul 6 weeks ago. At some point between then and now, Paul remarried for the 4th time. You keep doing it. You get engaged while you're still married to someone else.
Well, it's
Nothing to do with the morals.
It's a commitment. It's not it's not an official, I'm married. You know, you're telling me none of you have ever gotten engaged and never got married in the end of it? Come on. What about you?
I think that's highly unusual.
Well, you've never. It's 2019.
So, his new wife is Kelly Sayers, the lawyer who represented him during his divorce proceedings.
He couldn't afford a lawyer, so he's telling her he loves her, and she's believing it. And I'm thinking to myself, I have heard all that before, and you're just today's sucker.
They're not stupid. They've been scammed and they've been conned. And I think
Frank Abagnale is the most famous con man of all time.
Excuse me. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you have the most beautiful eyes I have ever seen.
In his new book, Scam Me If You Can, he warns that love cons are on the rise and that we must treat victims and perpetrators more seriously.
you can't just write it off as, well, that woman was foolish and she shouldn't have got involved with that guy. That's not the case. This is a criminal who defrauded someone, needs to be brought to justice for doing that.
I feel like everybody's looking at me saying, what sort of an idiot are you? But I have a degree in business and a degree in law. I'm not an idiot. It's just, I was so manipulated by him and I really wanted to make the relationship work. And that's the bottom line.
As for what's next, Brooklyn is focused on building her new life on this beautiful ranch near Albany. Another property which Paul conned her into buying and then tried to take during their bitter divorce.
It was meant to be the happy ending. And eventually it will be a happy ending, just without him. Good boy.
What would you like to see happen to him?
Well, clearly nobody's going to get their money back from him, but I think he needs to be held accountable. I mean, he needs to go to jail for what he's done. Anyone else would.
Of all the people you could have found to love you, rotten luck, isn't it?
It's, yeah, it is. But I've come out the other end and, you know, still kicking. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's got to get easier, right? It's got to get easier.
Can't get much more difficult.
No, true.